I'm a salesperson, right? What can I do in my part of the process to be proactive, prepare the customer ahead of time? Because these questions that they have, the issues that we have with MSA versus licenses and all that, it's not new. So what do you do?
Start sooner.
Start sooner?
Yep. Start sooner. Start asking the questions. What similar technologies have you worked with in the past? What has worked? What other parties are going to be engaged? Are there going to be any third-party contractors on site that we should be aware of, that maybe we could leverage things that they're doing or things that they've put into their agreements?
Welcome to An Ounce of Prevention, the podcast. At R. Reese & Associates, we believe that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Our daily commitment lies in informing our clients about legal risks without hindering their business objectives. As we like to say, we're in the business of building companies and helping executives sleep at night. So stay tuned. Maybe you'll learn something that'll help your business grow and thrive.
Hi, I'm Rachel Reese. In this contract series, we've talked a lot about the different types of contracts and what you need to paper up that relationship. Today, we're going to be talking about the tension between making the sale and getting the contract signed with Robert Ward, who is the Vice President of Business Development at Kuva Systems. Robert, welcome to An Ounce of Prevention.
Hey, thanks. Happy to be here.
This is so exciting.
It is. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so okay, first off, can you set the stage for me? Tell me just a bit about your background and why you're such an expert on this, and tell us specifically about Kuva.
I'm originally from Texas and been in the oil and gas space for about 30 years in automation, measurement, and control. And then I guess 6 or 7 years ago, I got introduced to Kuva and found it real interesting because we're kind of finding that convergence of what's happening with methane mitigation and operational excellence. And Kuva had a real cutting edge visualization camera that sits out on the site and looks around and takes pictures that are all timestamped of colorized gas plumes that are quantifiable so that operators can have ready access to visibility of what their methane emissions are, where they're coming from, and when they're occurring, so that you can get to root cause quicker to cut those emissions altogether.
Yeah, and you're not getting surprised by a TCEQ flyover?
Exactly. So we find when people talk about the motivators within our customer base, there's a lot of different personas. And we find that reputational risk at the executive branch or, the C-suites, it's a really big concern. Nobody wants to be Bloomberg's Monday morning announcement.
For sure. Okay, so since we're talking about sales, tell us a little bit about what the typical sales cycle is like at Kuva.
Having done automation, measurement, and everything, people, they know what they want to do. They know what they want to accomplish and what they want to do and what they have to do. In this methane space, as it's evolved lately, and especially into a new administration, people are trying to figure out, well, what do I need to do? What do I have to do? What do we think this is going to end up? What's going to happen throughout this administration, and what could a next administration look like? And then what are the impacts for European buyers of natural gas and hydrocarbons?
Yeah.
So everybody's demands are a little bit different right now, and they're a little bit in limbo. So that's about a little bit about the buying or the driving habits for our customers. The cycle is more around getting engaged early with environmental, air science, and that sort of thing. But as soon as we get going with a pilot, which is usually 1 to 5 cameras, once that's underway, then operations ends up seeing, well, there's a picture here, it's actionable. It's not just like a smoke detector where I get a notification and then we have to go look for it.
Yeah.
So the buying cycle starts off with a pilot, and then there's pretty quick realization. Then we take that and work with the customer to try to figure out who are all the stakeholders, what are the disciplines, what's the win for each of them, how does the output of a camera result in a very positive outcome for all of those different disciplines within the company. So we go from 1 to 3 to 5 units as a pilot,
right?
Usually 6 months, sometimes a little more, sometimes less. And it just,
if they see something
if they
right
see
away.
it,
Yeah.
if they see it right away, and depending on how many people or how many cooks are in the kitchen with that particular operator, but it's that realization. And then from there, we start to scale with 5, 10, 20 cameras. Our largest customer right now they're fixing to install their 200th camera. So it's it's really well proven. We're in 11 basins in North America and 4 provinces in Canada. We're in Australia, Brazil, and about to have our first camera online in the Middle East.
Fantastic. Okay, so that gives us an idea of the size and scope. So we're not talking about 1 to 5 cameras, maybe initially, but we're talking about the whole field.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So we're really going after this. There's a lot of cameras that are well over $100,000 total cost. We're a fraction of that. And the camera is continuous. It rotates about every 3.5 minutes. So we're doing a full site scan every 3.5 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let's go back to the sales process, the contracting process. You've gotten the verbal agreement to move forward with the customer, right? We're there. What happens next?
There's a bit of variability there. and that's really where guidance from you guys early on helped us so much. Just because we didn't realize we're bringing to market a piece of technology that our customers had not seen before. They've never seen pictures of things that you can't see.
Yeah.
So there's what's the intellectual property look like? What's the licensing look like? What's the rights look like? What's the data retention model look like? And then there's a lot of MSAs have pre-existing conditions around what they refer to as work. And it's not really work. We go out and we stand the camera up, but once that's done, there's not really work. And we're not a safety device. We're not a pressure vessel. It's not a life-threatening instance. The installation is quite easy. There's not a lot of risk. So we find that there's a ton of MSA content that just doesn't apply. And then there's some things that they don't have that they need to apply around IPN images and that sort of thing. So trying to get people to stop long enough and ideally have a phone call. And when it's by emails or text messages, it just seems like you're never going to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
But with a phone call, especially with you guys on the line, a lot of times those hurdles either draw near or you just knock them out and they're no longer an issue.
I mean, hopefully that's the plan, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But there can be so much tension, right? You put all of this effort into getting to the yes, and then it can sometimes take months to get that contract signed, especially, like you said, if there's a lack of understanding about what should be in there, what it is that you guys do. But that's what we're going to talk about today, right? How to get from point A to point B. Attention, all you deal makers in the Houston area. Get ready for the inaugural Dealmakers Haunted Hall Gala on October 23rd at Meow Wolf Radio Tav. It's going to be a night of networking, giving back, and some spooky thrills. The Dealmakers Haunted Hall Gala is your chance to meet with industry leaders while making a real impact on the communities we serve. This event isn't just about fun, it's about giving back to those in need. We're looking for sponsors to help make this event a success. With sponsorship levels ranging from $2,000 to $5,000, every contribution goes towards supporting local communities and making a difference where it matters most. The more sponsors, the greater the impact. We need your help to make this unforgettable. Visit www.rreeselaw.com for information about events, tickets, and sponsorships. Email rlamphere@rreeselaw.com to sponsor and be a part of something bigger than just an event. Let's make Halloween one to remember. Dealmakers Haunted Hall Gala, where the networking meets charity in the spookiest way possible. So first off, at what point do you step out of the process?
We have our general list of terms that we know that we can tick the box on these, and then we quickly get to the list where we make a handoff to your team.
Yeah.
And that in early on, which maybe 3 years ago. Has it been 3 years now?
I think so.
And so early on, we put together the guardrails of where we feel comfortable with your decisions on things as long as they're inside those guardrails.
Yeah.
And then over time, we've tuned the guardrails a little bit. And I think as soon as we get to the point where something is outside of our norm, so as we've done more and more of these over the last 8 years, we've our insurance have changed and all those kind of coverages, and there's a lot of things that weren't even on our radar that we had to accommodate because of these broad MSAs.
Yeah.
And I think the point that we make the handoff is when we get to where we're no longer confident that we understand what the customer is asking for, or we don't know how to engage in the conversation with them about finding a place in the middle.
Right.
And again, that's where your team has just been fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I wasn't searching for a plug there, but I always appreciate it. But, one of the areas of tension is the person that you had sold this idea to, had sold the pilot to, is not always the person on the other side that you're now talking to, right?
Never the one.
Right. And so they're like, who is this? We don't need this that badly. And, someone's in the background saying, no, we actually do need this. Get this contract done.
It's real interesting that even the companies don't know who these disciplines are or who their subject matter experts are when it comes to the legal. And there is still a lot of times, I don't want to say that the legal component is kind of a gated mechanism, but there's still people to talk to about, it's not a pressure vessel. Find somebody internal that can communicate in their verbiage what that means and that it's not a risk.
Yeah.
Or electrical or at height or what is labor.
Yeah.
And anyway, still trying to find all those things makes it difficult. It's getting better though. It's getting better. And we just got an MSA the other day for the first time that talks about the cloud instance and whose IP and what are the conditions around that.
Yeah.
And in the past, we've had to beg and negotiate through adding those to an existing old MSA that is really built around piping mechanical, people that are doing casings or workovers or those kind of things.
I like to say turning wrenches.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And so, yeah, it can take a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Months.
But surely there's a point where you step back in, right? And you say, hey, maybe I can have a conversation. Maybe we can do some education like you were saying.
I would say we like to do that as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And because we know what our expertise is and what we can do in-house. And that's why we have these kind of relationships, is the sooner that we can make that handoff, someone's going to get it done quicker and better than we could ever do. So I'd like to do it as soon as possible.
Okay. But I think there's some help that you can be on the front end. There are some things you can do to maybe smooth this process over. So I'm a salesperson, right? What can I do in my part of the process to be proactive, prepare the customer ahead of time? Because these questions that they have, the issues that we have with MSA versus licenses and all that, it's not new. So what do you do?
Start sooner.
Start sooner?
Yep. Start sooner. Start asking the questions. What similar technologies have you worked with in the past? What has worked? What other parties are going to be engaged? Are there going to be any third-party contractors on site that we should be aware of, that maybe we could leverage things that they're doing or things that they've put into their agreements?
I mean, it sounds like you guys are proactively trying to make things easier on the customer as well.
We absolutely are. Absolutely are. And not just in the sell cycle, it's really through the entire process. We're trying to take, I mentioned the output of the camera, and trying to get the output to an outcome and work with our customers so that we become a part of the workflow for around operational excellence and methane mitigation. And by being a part of that workflow, people don't have to stop and think, oh, I need to go log into my Kuva portal, or, oh, I have a notification from them. We're helping them filter all the noise. So if it's a sizable release in short duration or whatever, but there are people on site, because our camera can see that and it can filter that if there's a release, but there's people working, then the customer can set up whether they want to be notified about that or if they want it to be silenced.
Oh.
So we have a lot of conditions. So if it's a piece of equipment that periodically its normal operation is that it has emissions, then those can be suppressed and those quantification numbers can go to it's okay, but we're going to keep an eye on it and put it in this bucket, but there's no need to dispatch anyone.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing worse than getting a bunch of useless notifications because then you stop looking at them and then the one that you actually need to see, no one's paying attention by that point.
Exactly. And in the SCADA world, there's a term called alarm fatigue. And I found out that it's in the emission space as well.
Alarm fatigue is real.
It's real. It's a real thing. And I would say that our customers that are scaling, the real value and acceptance and field adoption is that they know from these pictures that they can trust them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of technologies and really good complementary technologies, but we're unique in providing a picture, piece of equipment that the gas is coming from so that they can determine when I go out there, here's what I need to do. Here's what I need to do. They're not going to have to make multiple trips. And we're working with them to build as much context around the output so that the outcome is fast and furious, and they can blow through this mitigation hurdles and be the optimal operators that they really want to be.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, hey, Robert, I really appreciate you coming out today. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
My thoughts would be this methane space is really difficult, and we know people want to address at scale. Mm-hmm. And there are some fears. They've tested some other things before, whether it's us, other technologies or whatever, and they've seen that there's a potential that a tremendous amount of data can be generated. And because it's not a money-making opportunity for the operator. Mm-hmm. It's doing things that they need to do, whether it's regulatory or Bloomberg protection or whatever, flyover protection. They need to do these things, and they can be done at scale cost effectively.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of operators address only their big problems, and if they do that, then they hope people won't look at the little problems.
Yeah.
But they really can be addressed at scale cost effectively.
So sort of like an ounce of prevention?
Just like that.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining me today. If you would like to be a guest on our show or have any questions or ideas for the podcast, please email us at podcast@rreeselaw.com.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. And now it's time for another case law update. Today's case is ConocoPhillips Company versus Kenneth Hahn, a recent ruling by the Texas Supreme Court that provides a critical guidance on whether a non-participating royalty interest, originally fixed, can later be converted into a floating royalty. This case has been winding its way through the courts since 2016, and it raises some big questions about NPRI interpretation, lease ratifications, and the enforceability of stipulations of interest. Here's the background. Kenneth Hahn originally owned 37.07 acres in DeWitt County, Texas, with a quarter mineral interest under the land. In 2002, he conveyed the land to William and Lucille Gibbs, but reserved a 1/8 NPRI for 15 years. In 2010, the Gibbses leased the land to Burlington Resources, a subsidiary of ConocoPhillips, under a quarter royalty lease, which required ratification from all royalty holders in order for Conoco to pool the acreage. Hahn ratified the lease in 2011 and later signed a stipulation of interest stating that his reserved interest was 1/8 of royalty for 15 years. ConocoPhillips pooled the acreage into the Maurer Unit B and initially credited Hahn with a fixed 1/8 NPRI. However, the company later claimed that this was incorrect, arguing that under the stipulation, Hahn's NPRI was actually 1/8 of the 1/4 landowner's royalty, or 1/32 of production. But we know from all these fixed versus floating royalty cases that a 1/8 NPRI is a fixed royalty at 1/8 of production, but 1/8 of royalty would vary depending on the lease terms and make it a floating royalty. Hahn sued, seeking a declaratory judgment that his NPRI remained fixed at 1/8 of production. The Texas Supreme Court tackled the two documents that Hahn signed. First, the ratification of the lease. Did Hahn's ratification of the original lease alter his NPRI? The court ruled that it did not. The court addressed the particularities of NPRIs in that they are non-possessory and distinct from other types of royalties. Specifically, a fixed NPRI represents a set share of production and cannot be diminished by lease terms unless explicitly stated. While Hahn's ratification bound him to the lease's pooling provision, it did not subject him or his NPRI to the lease's royalty rate. Second, the court addressed the stipulation of interest. Unlike the ratification, the court found that this document effectively converted Hahn's NPRI from fixed to floating. The court stated that the stipulation of interest clarified the parties' intent and contained conveyance language to modify Hahn's interest. Relying on its 2021 decision in Contra Resources versus Ellison, the court emphasized that such agreements are enforceable even if there's no pre-existing ambiguity, as long as the document is properly executed and supported by consideration. In short, the stipulation of interest was an enforceable agreement whereby Hahn converted his fixed royalty interest into a floating royalty interest. So why does this case matter? Well, this ruling should garner particular excitement among title practitioners, as this ruling confirms that a stipulation of interest is an effective curative tool to establish mineral title, regardless of whether the underlying instrument is ambiguous. But by that same token, any type of royalty holders should be paying careful attention when executing a stipulation of interest, given that they could end up changing the value of their interest. Well, that's it for today. I'd like to once again thank Miguel Otero for his help on this update. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The information and material in this episode is general information about our practice and firm and is for educational and informational purposes only. This information does not offer specific legal advice, and the use of this information does not create an attorney-client relationship with RR&A or any of its attorneys. The information in this episode, or any episode of An Ounce of Prevention, should not be considered legal advice, and persons should not act upon this information without first engaging professional legal counsel.
Thank you for listening to An Ounce of Prevention, presented by R. Reese & Associates. If you found this episode informative, subscribe to, rate, and review our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to stay up to date with future episodes, case law updates, and breaking news. If you have any questions or are interested in learning what RR&A's outsourced legal department can do for your company, reach out to us at podcast@rreeselaw.com. That's podcast@RREESELAW.com. Follow us on LinkedIn or call 832-831-2289.